John Winthrop's model of Christian charity, and I didn't print out the regular sources because it's a lot longer. I might want to waste paper. Oh, it's the what you use to fill out. Did you want this?
There's guaranteed that
It's in that packet.
Oh, is it in my packet?
No, if you want to write there. Alright, so this lesson would go after, like almost like a Jamestown lesson, the first American colonies in Virginia, and after.
So say, Larry.
That was really something wrong with the presentation.
Alright, so what are some generic terms for a Puritan?
Pilgrim.
Okay. See, I didn't even make that connection. Wow. Anywhere else? What's a stereotypical pilgrim? What would you think of?
Purity. A hat with a buckle.
Yeah, oh, well,
Stockings? No? Okay, so
I'll take it.
bonnets.
Alright, so a conservative, for the most part, they were, I put this on here just to break into a Puritanism thing. A lot of the stereotypes on Puritanism is just like all black. See, they're wearing purple a lot. I'm not sure if that was the main color. Thought it was a color of royalty, but that might be a little bit farther back than what I'm thinking. But this is just like just a painting of when they're arriving. I'm sure they didn't pose for this, so it's afterwards. But my presentation's on Puritan exceptionalism, and we've heard lately about American exceptionalism with Obama in Syria and Putin. I don't know his last name, but it's just kind of linking the two and historical. There we go. All right. So, what is exceptionalism? Anyone like? Watch. Anybody want to read it?
A theory that a nation, region, or political system is exceptional and does not conform to the norm.
All right. So, when put it in context, what would an American exceptionalism be? You can just use a Syria example if you'd like, if you want it, or because we're going to pull in the Puritan throughout the gist of it and then bring it back. Oh, I'm sorry, Anthony.
Well, I guess American exceptionalism, like the idea that like we're number one and like we're the world police, like kind of what we says goes, like that mentality.
Yeah, I always think of it as like a Big Brother complex in the world. So what I want you guys to look at throughout this presentation is how the Puritans are looking at the rest of the world towards themselves, and it's a big theme in Winthrop's. I keep wanting to call it City on a Hill, but charity model of Christian charity. Sorry, I'll get to it. All right, and so this is we touched on the stereotypical. This is just a fast breakthrough of a Puritan. It's a Protestant form of Christianity. And I mentioned the purify. They are wanting to purify the Anglican Church or the Church of England at this time. Before they go to the Americas, they're trying to do it within. And John Winthrop himself was a lawyer high up in the government, not high up in the government, but he was up there, and he pretty much got some anti-Puritanism settlement, and was kicked out or kind of left on his own accord. It was kind of confusing how there's both of them kind of was thrown at me. They really didn't like Church of England because Church of England was just adopted or just pretty much renamed, and it was too much like Roman Catholicism. And what the Puritans are worried about is corruption and in going through one person's interpretation of the church, which everything goes through the King England, which is King James. I didn't put a whole lot of facts or dates on here for some reason. I noticed this when I was going through it, so I'm going off the top of my head. We'll go. All right, so the first break from England, charters. You might know what a charter is when they were selling charters or selling contracts to go colonize the Americas. How it worked was, pretty much put a bid up. I'm not sure if it was necessarily a bid, but you bought you signed a contract with the king gave it to you, and you're looking for gold, precious metals, and stuff like that, and you get to keep like 4/5 of what you earn, and everybody in like 1/5 of it goes. It's some fraction like that, but 1/5 of it goes back to Church of England. But usually, how they're set up before the Cambridge Agreement in 1629, the charter stays in England, so the people running the colony are in England. But the Cambridge Agreement had the Puritans settled on actually taking everybody migrating to, or well, this group migrating to England with the charter, so everything's dealt with in the New World or the Americas. In this case, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which this would give it definitely more control to the colonists. And what kind of advantages would this propose for the Puritans over? Like, what could it lead to also? I got you.
I mean, they pretty much have the opportunity to make their own laws, but it can lead to a revolution.
Most definitely. Their own laws, I'll get to it later, but the Puritans had a strict set of laws for their community. We'll get to that later, but it does change the concept of how they look at start the change of how they're looking at the world. It's a quick slide of the map. The journey took about 2.5 months, which is kind of strange because I don't think there's any way you can go in the world now that will take you 2.5 months to get back home. They left on March 29th, and they got there in June 12th of 1630. And this is just to show exactly where it is. The first, the Jamestown and everything's a little bit farther south, but they're going 2.5 months out of the way. We're talking distance in time. But 2.5 months out of the way into a notoriously dangerous living standards. And so they're trying to get away from this church, and they're using this break from the church, and how I said they're separatists now, because they're trying to reform the church from the outside. How is that possible, to reform the church from the outside? We'll get to this later.
Wait,
Kind of jump.
can you ask me again? Can you ask me again?
How is it possible to reform a church from the outside? And why would they be making this much of a distance in between them and the church with the Cambridge charter? Sorry, we'll go through. We're just making distance, and we'll get to the point. Okay. But this is what I was getting at with the two different views of the world. Can anybody? This is more contemporary, and this was made in 1677, which is. John Winthrop and the Puritans arrived in 1630 is where I'm focusing most of my this lesson on. But let me tell you the major difference in these two maps. The more contemporary one and the one from 1677. Allie?
I guess tilt of Massachusetts itself, it's coming from a different area because it's coming from a European perspective as opposed to our perspective where we're kind of like centered on straight.
Yeah, it's based off of like a new outlook. Like they're not including barely into the ocean. You're pretty much when you're looking at it, you think your back's towards England, which I mean I'm sure that's not exactly what it is, but they're definitely creating some distance, and I feel like this shows a lot of it. I know this is a contemporary view of the world. It's how like the complete world, because they don't know all the corners yet, but yeah, there we go. All right, so we're getting to John Winthrop. He was on that journey from March 29th through June 12th, and anybody heard the phrase "city on a hill"? All right, anybody care to explain it?
Go for it.
Oh, no, please, please.
It's a
take it.
biblical statement. I mean, so you can be city on a hill so people would see you from miles away, because you'd be an example.
Good deal, yeah. He did the sermon on, they're not even to America yet. I mean, but they're not the first Puritans to go over. There's some in Salem that they were settled into in 1826 and it's 1830. Sorry, I keep thinking 1630. But with your homework for last night, your homework, we go over his speech of Modern Christian Charity where he mentions City Upon a Hill. We're going to go through a couple of the quotes on here. Alright, this is the actual one. We must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us. Going back to the reform of the Anglican Church, why is this necessary to reform a church if you're 2.5 months away? I don't know the distance in miles, but time is pretty significant here.
Why is it significant to?
The change, like they're trying to change, they're trying to purify the church, and they're continuing making a gap between them and the Anglican Church, but this is separatist. Go back to the alright, well, sorry, get caught up in my own words, but go back to the point of Puritan exceptionalism, which he never coined in here, but I took it from the American, this more contemporary American exceptionalism. What are they trying to do to paint themselves? They're not gonna paint themselves as they can't be anything less than perfect if they're gonna do something this far away. And so these laws and stuff that we're gonna get to in a minute are gonna be reflected on that. Alright. Here we go. Oh wait, here's the laws. And I had a picture of the Scarlet Letter. Who read the Scarlet Letter? Alright, everybody. I had a picture of the old Scarlet Letter, but I lost the URL and I couldn't find the reference, so I had to exit out of there. And it was just a mess. But a man here standing on a stockade around people, humiliation. You had to attend church. You can get fined if you didn't attend church. They had the Puritans weren't the only ones in Salem and the Boston, but their community itself was segregated from, not segregated, but they needed the commerce from the non-Puritans to function. Because they, along with being religiously pure, they wanted to be resourceful. They wanted to be. I gave away my discussion question. All right, but yeah, definitely not so tall about other relations. Coming up, we'll learn about Anne Hutchinson and Roger. And does anybody, without reading this, does anybody know where kind of the public education started off before this? I know we were in the School of Ed, but it's kind of a fun fact. Thomas Paine. I'm not going that far, but the Puritans put a lot of effort into public education. The Old Dillard Samuel, and they call them the Old Dillard Samuel because the Satan was going to use non-education. He's going to use that against people, like settle down and bring them to the dark side, if you will. But how the 50 families had to hire reading or writing teachers, and teachers are typically remember correctly, teachers are typically housewives before they got married. It's like really short gap before they got married. And grammar teachers is pretty much college prep right now. And this is a little thing right here. And does anybody want to read that? Just gonna get to the mood.
The note thing?
Yeah, we can do that kind of.
Sorry, space.
Sorry.
Whole thing?
Um,
Bottom part, top part, middle?
I'll take just,
Bottom.
yeah, whatever one you want.
Okay, I'll read it all. Now the child being, I think this is, entered. Now the child being entered in his letters and spelling, let him learn there and such. Whoa.
These and such.
Wow, these and such. Like sentences by heart, whereby he will be in. How can you guys read that? I can't. Okay, I bet I say and filled by the duty and encouraged in his learning. Is it Dateful Child's promise?
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Wow. I will fear God and honor. There we go. Honor the king. I will honor it again.
Yep.
I will honor my father and mother. I will obey my superiors. I will submit to my elders. Okay. I will love my friends. I will something to men. I will hate no man. Hate no man. There we go. I will forgive my enemies and obey and pray to God for them. I will something communion to keep God's communion. I will blank in the.
It's good.
Okay.
Thank you. Though.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's awesome. The first college is Harvard, but with going with this, it's just focusing on religion. Their whole from the get-go, there's not a whole lot of books on available, but literacy is a huge thing. It's really high in the Massachusetts area compared to the rest of the world at this time, and the reason for this because they want people to be reading the Bible and they want people to. I mean, they're making people go to church. I just saw the last one, but they want people to. They're trying to be as pure as possible. Be that city upon a hill. All right, here's another quote. Does somebody want to read this one?
This I can read. It's easy.
All right. Here you go.
All right, I gotta redeem myself. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, as members of the same body. John Winthrop.
All right. So, what does it say about community? What's John Winthrop's ideas on community?
Life is community, community makes life meaningful.
Great. Yeah. Anybody else want to before I?
It's essential, yeah,
Yeah.
it's essential.
Community. He's putting a lot of emphasis on this community because I mean this is their whole purpose of being. They're trying to excel and they're trying to change the world pretty much just by their example. Here we go, Roger Williams. There we go. It wasn't just a Roger. But he founded Providence when he was banished, and the reason why he was banished is because he didn't like the fact that the Puritans were not tolerant for other religions. So this is kind of where we get the separation of church and state, the start of it. Not exactly him, but everything's going. Anne Hutchinson, we'll learn about later. She actually goes to Rhode Island. That's Providence is the capital of Rhode Island, and the other one is the other main thing he did was he thought the government was taking lands unfairly, and actually when he went to Rhode Island, he actually traded fairly for his land. I mean, I'm not sure how fair it was. I didn't see the exchange rate, but he made it as fair as possible so his conscience was clear. And yeah, what does this say about the separation of church and state? Like the Puritans had to leave England because they couldn't necessarily practice freely, and Puritan is doing the same thing. In relation to the community, how is this kind of contradictory? Allie?
They have just exclusive community, so they kind of limit themselves, and with John Winthrop, he makes it seem that community is very essential to live, but then they limit their community down to just Puritans. Instead of using other resources.
I mean, they're using the commerce and the trade for the non-Puritans that are around them, and close settlements, but they're not. They're very careful about including Puritans in their actually idea of community. And this goes back with the American Indians, how dangerous it was around this time, because there's constant skirmishes. We're taking land from the American Indians, and we're really repaying them back. Here, go through. Get sidetracked. Keep going. All right, one more. Anybody wanna?
You can continue
Ladies,
the question. God in his most holy and wise providence hath so disposed the condition of mankind, as in all times some must be rich, some poor, some high and eminent in power and dignity, others mean and in submission.
All right. By mean, he means just average. What does it say about John Winthrop's idea of equality? Do we want to?
He basically doesn't believe in equality. He thinks some men are meant to be greater than others and some less than.
Yeah, and I feel like this is also contradicting about the community aspect. Like they're trying to, that at all times, some must be rich, some poor. And going back to the exceptionalism, like this is kind of ties right into it, like the Big Brother complex. They're going to, they're always going to be at the top of the hill, and there's going to be people at the bottom of the hill that they're going to have to be a big brother to. They're going to have to be an example to try to climb the hill, but I don't see them, with this, with the metaphor, I don't see John Winthrop going down the hill. They're just going to be the example at the top. Alright, Anne Hutchinson, it's Anne there. She was banished from Massachusetts Bay Colony for downplaying the New She was running something out of her house, a little Bible study, and she believed that people can just interpret the Bible themselves. They don't need ministers or the Puritan ministers, which really nothing too wrong with that, except maybe because she's a woman, that would be a problem when she's trying to lead a big mass during this time. And how would you say this is ironic also? I touched on it a little bit with Mr. Williams. Let me get back to my downplaying information. Well, when the Puritans left England, one of the big reasons was because they didn't trust the king with their religion. They didn't. That's not why they left. I'm sorry. Why they left why they started calling themselves Puritans and broke off from the England Church, the Church of England. Go through that. All right. So the Puritan legacy. We went through all this. The public schooling. They wanted literacy, but they apparently didn't want people to have too much control of the religion because there's a hierarchy here. Separation of church and state. Roger Williams took care of that. When he went to Rhode Island, that's where Anne Hutchinson actually flew off to. And there's and they're starting a democratic government. I know that with the hierarchy thing, it's not really. But the Mayflower Compact, that was made in 1620 instead of 16. That was before John Winthrop and what I've been focusing on. But what happened was a group of Puritans were going to down the Jamestown area, and they kind of went too far north, and so into the Boston, Massachusetts area, and so a lot of the people on the boats were like, "Hey, the charter doesn't matter anymore. I'm just going to do whatever I want." And so they made this Mayflower Compact, and it was kind of everybody, actually only 40 out of 100 people on the ship signed it. Something like that. It was a really low percentage comparatively. But they signed it saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a part of this community as long as the laws made are as long as the laws made are beneficial or for our interests." And the Cambridge Agreement, as we saw earlier, when the break from England, they got a little bit farther away with their charter, and they were running their colony in their colony at the Americans. And that's why I put the American exceptionalism with a question mark. Do you think this is or what President Obama was talking about actually a couple weeks ago now, wasn't it? Time about it's America's duty to help Syria because we're a global power, we're the big brother. We have to help people that are in need. Justice anywhere, effective justice everywhere. Yeah, that was okay. But here we go, and this will lead to my assessment, which is my next slide. And these two pictures, we discussed a little about it. And is America still a city upon the hill? I know I showed you this earlier when we were talking about when the actual quote came up. And this came up when I just searched city upon a hill, which makes sense because it's right there. But what do you think about this? Is our America exceptionalism part of Puritan history? Is it this gap? I feel like a lot of it's the same. Allie?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar, but kind of stuck around from the time of as it went along. So when the revolution was happening, it was a symbol for revolutions to come, and may or may not have sparked a couple other revolutions because of ours. And then it just kind of continues on through there. But I don't necessarily think it's a good thing that we have this complex as a nation.
All right. Yeah, with exceptionalism, with this lesson, I was debating on going to have the assessment be about like a more modern thing, but I just decided to put it's a 1 or 2 paragraphs about what do you think, answering this question apparently, and putting what you think about American exceptionalism, what's your outlook on the rest of the world as an American, and why or why not you think the Puritans have influenced this. Any questions? All right, continue a little bit. I think we're good then. I think we're good. I wanted to I call on people, I kept on shining the eyes on there.